If there is only one thing you need to learn and understand about Magna Carta 1215, it's this. Magna Carta 1215 is the sole peaceful means known to humankind by which the rights of the weakest, most innocent citizens can prevail over a massive, potentially corrupt and oppressive state power. This is the voice of freedom. Magna Carta 1215 Learning Centre. Welcome to your next lesson with hosts Fitzroy and Carl.
Well, good evening, folks. Welcome to lesson number 8 this evening, and I'm hoping that my connection issues are going to get us through. If they don't tonight, I apologise. We will get back with you again on Wednesday. Stage if all this gets too difficult to play the game with. Fitz, thanks for bearing with me through these trials and tribulations over the last week, but I think oh God, I spent the day with Telstra today, so fingers crossed by tomorrow or Wednesday it's going to be fixed.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. We just work with what we have. That's all we can do. So, we need to be adaptive. So that's what we do. We adapt.
Absolutely. So just wanted to let you know too, Fitz, that tomorrow night, of course, I'm going to the Gold Coast for the Ricardo Bosi interview. Tomorrow night, we're doing it with a live audience, which will be great, and they'll be able to do some interacting. I have been approached from a number of common law organisations, one of which being in Bundaberg. Hello to Melissa. And we are going to be in Bundaberg for the Bosi show on a Tuesday night coming up on the 12th of July. So, folks, if you want to come along to that show, and if you are a common law type, Fitz, you're happy enough to come and do a sort of like a pre-show, if you like. So we'll just have you online. You can answer some questions or give us a bit of a talk and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's be my pleasure to have a part to play or a contribution to make. So yeah, I'm more than willing to get involved.
Excellent. Well, really pleased that you're going to be involved with that. And of course, Bundaberg on the 12th, Ipswich on the 19th, and then going to Toowoomba on the 26th. I'll give you all details for that. If you want to go to the show tomorrow night on the Gold Coast, it's being held at the Croatian Club. Tickets are available through Sticky Tickets, and they're only $5 if you get them online. They're $10 if you wait and get them at the door tomorrow night. We're only covering costs, folks. Nobody's making money out of this. So if you like to come along, we'd love to have you. And if you've got a question for Ricardo, we'll arrange that. Now, on to the reason that we're here tonight. Good evening to everyone. I haven't said hello to everybody. We've got a ton of people in, over 100 people watching online and having a bit of a chat. So g'day to everybody. I won't hold you all up. We've got some big lessons to get into again tonight, Fitz. In fact, it's part 2 leading on from last week. So it was a bit of an epic last week.
Yeah, I'm hoping everyone who's watching tonight has done their work and watched the previous episode, because it's going to make a lot more sense if you've watched the previous one. If you're coming into it now, coming into Occult, it's going to be a bit confusing. So we did the heavy lifting last week, so that's kind of really important that people get a look at it so they can understand how this connects and ties in, because without that, this won't make sense. So fingers crossed, guys, you've watched last week.
All right. Let's get into the first slide for tonight.
So if you watch that, you would understand what this numbering system means. So 667, basically, it just means that you're acting. This number 6 is connected to like 666, the number of the beast. But in cult numerology, so this is not my belief, right? So just going to be clear about this. This is the occult, the dark occult. So the magic sorcerers, all those people that do all these spell casting, etc., that pull the strings behind the scenes. This is their system. So if you're acting without thinking or feeling, that's what this means. 6 is to be unthinking, and the other 6 is to not have any feeling about it. But 7 means to be in action. So you're acting without thinking or feeling. So we just, took a quick look at the Fraternal Order of Police in the USA. And also there's the Masonic symbols there with the all-seeing eye and the handshake for the initiates that they do. But basically what this means, the lettering, if you go, F is number 6 in the alphabet, 0 is O is number 15, And the way they do their numerology is they add the numbers together until they get one single digit. So they take the 15, they make it a 1 and a 5, add it together, and they get a 6. Same thing with the P. The P is a 1 and a 6, which makes a 7. So what they're saying is that the police are people who do not think nor feel, but they just act. So they're just really good robots who will do what they're told. That's what that symbology is telling you, right? So I just wanted to recap that because it's quite important to what we're going to, finish off with tonight. So
and to
that
put
was
it down the
as
bottom,
much.
down the bottom on the right hand leg, if you like, the Mason's handshake.
Yep. That's the initiate when they shake. That's your initiate hand when you're being initiated into it. That's the handshake they give you, and obviously you see the all-seeing eye on the other side there. So with their symbology, they're telling you. And so why I wanted to go over this again is that's why they chose in America the number 911, because and same with September 11. So because when you add 9 with 1 and a 1, you get 9 and 2. Now, if you watched last week, the number for ascending into your true divine self is 93. So 9 is the base number. That means base consciousness. You're just operating out of real, like you could basically just be dead and you've just got a body that moves, but you've got no spirit, right? You're just like a carnal. You're operating out of carnal instinct. That's what 9 means in cult symbology. And when you move to the 3 in their symbol, you have to watch last week to understand this, guys. So I'd suggest you haven't seen it, go back and watch last week. And that's on your page on Project Matilda, isn't it, Carl? Last week's?
Yes, it is, absolutely. And I think it's still up on YouTube.
Oh, I didn't realize you'd up on YouTube.
So
guys, if you... Oh, fantastic. Well, that's something I didn't know. So if you're listening, guys, I do recommend, if you don't understand this, to go back and watch last week. It'll make a lot more sense. 3 basically means in cult or occulted or dark occulted symbology, that is when you move from base consciousness into your higher state of, or the higher order thinking consciousness, where you're really alert and are connected to your true spiritual self, right? And that requires the love and the will to ascend into. And so why they've chosen 911 is because when you add 9 plus 1 plus 1, you get 9 plus 2, 9 and 2, and that's just falling short of 93. So you're not quite there. And then when you do the addition of 9 and 2, so 92 breaks up into 9 and a 2, which equals 11, which breaks up to 1 and 1, which equals 2. And then obviously you do that over 93, which is 9 plus 3, which comes to 12, which comes, when you break that up, is a 1 and a 2, and that equals 3. So you've got 2/3, and the decimal answer of 2/3 is 0.666666 per repeating. So what they're telling you is that if you are calling the police or emergency services, you are calling people who are acting without thinking or feeling. And if you're in a position where you're actually calling the police, you yourself are in a disaster state. So you're not in your higher state of consciousness. You're in this base level, like if you're harming each other. So they are actually ritually mocking you because they're saying you're just repeating the pattern of eternal failure. That's what they're actually trying to do here why they chose these numbers. So this is about understanding how they mock us, right? How worthless, and that's why they justify what they do to us. Because we're incapable of actually acting in the service of that which we seek, because they've created the conditions for us not to be aware of it, and they've hidden all that knowledge, and then they laugh about it, right? They have a good time. That's why the 2 things they can't handle is when we do the same back to them. They can't handle when we mock them. They can't handle what's the word? A peaceful non-compliance. They can't handle that. They don't have a mechanism for that. This all ties into Article 61, because that's all about peaceful non-compliance through a way that you can utilize everyone together. So there is a, guys, and hopefully we'll tie it up towards the end, but I just wanted to have a brief touch on why I've put this here. All right, this is the one we're about to get up to, which we didn't finish off last week, and for good reason. So this is the part where we need to swallow some unpleasant things about ourselves, guys, because if we don't act in a place of deep reflection, we're going to keep repeating the same errors. Did you want to have a tackle at this one, Carl?
I'll have a go.
Reading it?
By means of ever more effective methods of mind manipulation, the democracies will change their nature. The quaint old forms, elections, parliaments, supreme courts, and all the rest will remain. The underlying substance will be a new kind of totalitarianism. All the traditional names, all the hallowed slogans will remain exactly what they were in the good old days. Democracy and freedom will be the theme of every broadcast and editorial. Meanwhile, the ruling oligarchy and its highly trained elite of soldiers, policemen, thought manufacturers, and mind manipulators will quietly run the show as they see fit.
So basically, this is inverted totalitarianism, right? It gives you the appearance that you have control over your decisions, while really they're pulling the strings the whole time and they know it. But the main thing is that to get you to believe that you're in charge when you're actually not. That's pretty much what that's saying. And the only way that could ever change is if we, the people, have the reins over government. And there's only one way to do that that's universal. And that's through trial by jury. And unless we have that, and unless people who are saying that they're here for your protection, these new up and comers, right? If they don't start talking about trial by jury, we're straight back into everything that's written here. It's no different, because you need to have a mechanism, a physical mechanism that actually can be, a source of force to keep government in check. So it is what it's designed to be, and that is just an administrative body of the will of man. That's all that we ever allowed them to be. And if we don't have a way by which we can actually make that happen, this is what we're living, and we're going to keep living. So anyone who makes you promises that things are going to be different without mentioning trial by jury and explaining it explicitly and giving you a clear understanding of it, that they understand it, then you're pretty much looking at this.
Yeah, absolutely. And what this lacks is a bit of respect, whether it's self-respect or otherwise.
Yeah, so the reason I've put this in here is to really give people a true indication and an understanding of the meaning of the word respect from its etymological roots. Did you want to give it a crack, Carl?
Oh, yeah, because I love speaking Latin. All right, from the Latin prefix re again and the Latin verb spectare, or to look at. So to take another look at oneself. That's what self-respect is.
So it means to actually go into deep inner reflection. So to truly respect oneself, you need to look at all the parts that you don't like and that are uncomfortable. And you need to be willing and have the courage to do that. Because if you don't integrate every aspect of you, you're always going to blame other people that all the things that you don't like that exist in the planet only exist in them. And you're never going to have the courage to acknowledge that if it can exist in someone else, it can exist in you. And so if you don't acknowledge that, you're always going to make someone else the problem, and you're never going to get into that space where you make friends with the very uncomfortable parts of yourself. But if you don't integrate, you can't move forward, and you end up being part of the problem. You never end up being part of the solution. And so that's just a really fast way, and it leads into the sort of heavy stuff we're going to go have a look at now about the courage that it takes to be able to understand just how we've been controlled because we've been falling prey to our biases and we've not even been aware of it.
So the sort of stuff you're talking about, I think I had a bit of an example of today. I mean, it happens with me every day in one respect or another. I've got to pull myself up when I get angry about something, or I might have a different view to something. Today's example was I was in a shopping centre. I just spent the better part of 5 hours dealing with Telstra. I wasn't happy. In fact, I was very unhappy. And then people in the car park didn't seem to know how to drive, or were lost, or didn't know how to get out, or didn't know where the accelerator was, or there were 100,000 other reasons. I found myself getting very, very frustrated, angry, and then I just thought, well, hang on a minute. I've been in places where I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how to get out of a car park. In fact, if I'm honest, there's a shopping centre in Brisbane called the Maya Centre, where I lost my car for 3 hours because I couldn't find it. I didn't remember what level it was parked on. So tolerance is something we have to generate with all of this. Because if we can't be tolerant of others, we have to learn from our own mistakes, and not keep making them. Notice them, pull ourselves up when we go to make them, and that will improve us as well as people as we go forward, won't it?
Yeah, it's also having a capacity to look into what it is you were actually wishing to achieve and whether your strategy lined up with your intention. And then instead of berating yourself over your strategy not lining up with your intention, it's about, well, what was my intention? And is that the only way that I can meet it? So it's about opening up your capacity for creativeness. But if you stay in that space where you're berating yourself, you never have a capacity to access that creative side of you. So
Yeah.
it's about understanding creativity comes from a place of love, where you actually have that self-care, and then you open those windows up after that space is entered. But if you're in that space where you're in self-criticism, you don't have the capacity for creativity.
Absolutely. Well, my strategy was to get the hell out of there as fast as possible, and the only way to do that was to get out through the queue of people who didn't know how to drive. So I was a bit hamstrung. But anyway, here's another Vernon Howard quote. Human sickness is so severe that few can bear to look at it, but those who do will become well.
Yeah, so this is what I was saying earlier, but it's about going to that deep inner reflection and to look at the very things that you see outside yourself really obviously, that doesn't take much effort, and then to recognize that if it exists outside, it must exist inside, and to search that part in yourself and integrate yourself with it. So you're not actually fighting it, you're not denying it, you're accepting that it exists. And then if you can accept that it exists in you, then you can make friends with it. And then if you can make friends with it, it doesn't have to be your master. So it's when you deny something, that's when you're in resistance to it, and then it's controlling you. So anything you resist has control over you. And so it's a really fast way. That there's a lot more to it than that. That was just all I wanted to touch on, is to accept that if someone else can behave in ways that you can't handle, there's a good chance that you can behave that same way. All you're missing is those conditions that they have lived that stimulated them into that space where they're acting in ways that you can't handle. And that's the bit of deep inner work. And so we've been doing things that are working against ourselves without being aware of it. So the next list of quotes is going to sort of really articulate that. When you're ready, Carl,
everywhere you turn, be it the state or the church, the media or the schools, you're taught one thing above all else: the virtue of subjugating yourselves to mortals who claim to have the right to rule you.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Not really much I can add to that one, other than, what's here. Like, it just says it so beautifully. I don't really think I can give it any more weight or depth. I really don't. So I reckon I'm pretty confident most people would connect with that.
All right, the next one. In truth, the belief in government is a religion made up of a set of dogmatic teachings, irrational doctrines, which fly in the face of both evidence and logic, and which are methodically memorized and repeated by the faithful. Like other religions, the gospel of the government describes a superhuman, supernatural entity above mere mortals, which issues commandments to the peasantry, for whom unquestioning obedience is a moral imperative.
Yeah, like I said, Larkin really just has a way with words to really nail it. So there's not much I can add here. That I just sort of speaks for itself. That's why I love these quotes. And I'm just really grateful that I've come across his work. So, yeah, we can go to the next one.
You evade your responsibility as human beings by hallucinating a false god that relieves you of the duty to think for yourselves. You don't want to be free because being merely obedient requires so much less thought.
Yeah, so if you think, yeah, it really nails it. It's something about, that getting into the mind and creating a perception that has no bearing on reality, and then actually accepting that as true. And for so long, most of us, and me included, have fallen into that because there was a level of comfort that we got from that. So I'm not saying I'm above this. I'm just saying, when I take a deep look, this is what I'm uncovering. So when I saw these quotes, I'm like, yeah, I used to be there for sure. And I'm making friends with it and acknowledging it. So it's an offering for everyone else to have a go and see what that's like for them.
Do you think that Larkin Rose here is saying, when he was referring to a false god, referring to a Christian god or to all gods or to all kinds of spirituality, because you'd have to agree there is a lot of spirituality mixed into what's going on in the world at the moment. Who you
Yeah,
believe in as your God is
I would,
necessarily
I would,
important.
when I read that, I'm hearing three types of gods: money, the classic organized religion, and government. I'm
Yep.
hearing those three because they're the three biggest ones that everyone's bought into.
Yep.
So that's what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing when I hear that. I'm not sure if that helps other people or what lands in their bodies, but when I see that word in that phrasing, that's what's coming for me.
Yeah, cool. All right. Just trying to, here we go. You are not Christians, you are not Jews, you are not Muslims, and you certainly aren't atheists. All who have the same God, and its name is government. You're all members of the most evil, insane, destructive cult in history, and if there ever was a devil, the state is it, and you worship it with all your heart and soul.
So, we've all
There's a
heard
lot
of
of people.
we've heard of the Stockholm syndrome. Well, this is Stockholm syndrome extrapolated out on the global, sphere. So this is what unites
And
us all, no
pandemic
matter.
shows that. The pandemic showed that the ease with which people put on masks and lock themselves away.
Yeah, that's a beautiful illustration. It's so pertinent to everything we've witnessed over the past 2 years that, it just nails it. So yeah, I love how you've connected that.
Some of us realize the self-evident truth that no election, no constitution, no legislation, and no other pseudo-religious political ritual can bestow upon anyone the right to rule another. Nothing can make a man into a rightful master. Nothing can make a man into a rightful slave.
Yeah. So when that's truly accepted, that there's no way that no matter what justification comes up, no matter how well it's constructed, your intuition, your conscience cannot be reprogrammed to actually accepting this as a truth. It just can't be. It's not possible. And so with all the AI, that everything that they're trying to do to program us and that, they can't program your conscience. It's not possible. So if you attach to your conscience, you will know that there's no way you could ever be a slave, ever. It doesn't exist in nature. And if it doesn't exist in nature, it doesn't exist in reality. It needs to be constructed through perception. And this is the mind trick that most of us have been through. So, we had those recent elections, right? And there's a lot of people in the truth movement that thought that was a good idea to go and vote because what else is there? And so they just go, well, there's nothing else, so we'll just go do it, without realizing they're actually contributing to the opposite of what they're seeking. And that comes from a place of desperation, and that's how they get us, right? Is when we are desperate. And so this is the level of soul searching that's required, so we're not repeating the patterns that are we're contributing to our own slavery. This is what I'm saying. This is the uncomfortable work, and if we want to come out of it and we want to unify, we need to go through this uncomfortable work. There's just no other way around it.
True freedom and self-ownership is the simplest, most self-evident thing in the world. It's so obvious that people have to be constantly trained to not see it. It's the belief in authority that depends upon mental gymnastics, ignoring obvious contradictions, and engaging in ridiculously complex and convoluted rationalizations to try to justify one group of people ruling another.
Yep, I just love it. I mean, when I read this stuff, it's just landing. He pretty much just said what I said a moment ago, just in a different way. Because we intuitively know we don't need to make up, like fantasies, but that's what we end up doing. Most people will make up some kind of fantasy to fit their prison.
Frederick Douglass, a former slave, witnessed and described that exact phenomenon among his fellow slaves, many of whom were proud of how hard they'd worked for their masters and how faithfully they did as they were told. From their perspective, a runaway slave was a shameful thief, having stolen himself from the master. And that's pretty much how they have us paying taxes.
Yeah, I was just thinking about all the jabbing that's been happening, right? And how the very people who have taken the jabs, they have become their own prison guards, right? And prison guards of everybody, so they don't want any of the sheep getting out the pen themselves, right? So they're in there chasing us too. That's what I was thinking when I first read that. I thought that's so on display.
And now,
right?
I think you want this PDF up now, do you?
Yeah, if we can get that, because now we're going to start moving into where the real understanding of why Magna Carta 1215 is the solution. I can't really read that. Can you read that? It's a bit small. Is there a way to enlarge it on the screen?
Here. Yeah, let me.
Oh, there we go.
Is that easier?
Yep, now we're pretty good. So this, I ideally wanted to grab it from the website. Luckily, when I grabbed it, I actually turned it into a document because, as you and I discovered, that website's not functioning for some reason. So I'm so pleased.
That's right. It's failed for some reason.
I don't know what happened. So I'm so pleased I cut and paste this because this is really critical knowledge. So this was written on the British Constitutional Group website, and it's really well written to make the connection between natural justice, divine law, and Magna Carta. It really illustrates it. So that's why I wanted to bring this up, so people can, if they have any doubts, hopefully this will help them break through some of those doubts to see why it's all connected. So do you mind if I read this, Carl?
No, way you go.
All right. So obviously you can see it's called Common Law Constitutional Emergency. In 2001, one of the most important clauses in the most famous document of the British Commonwealth, so we're part of the British Commonwealth here in Australia, and English Constitution, the Great Constitutional Security and Restoration Clause. So that's what Article 61 is, right, of the Magna Carta 1215, was invoked lawfully and correctly by the Barons Committee, as reported by the Daily Telegraph. So there's evidence that it was actually enacted because the newspapers put it in there because they have to, and acknowledged by the United Kingdom's head of state, the most senior public servant of the Commonwealth. Now, you see, it said of the Commonwealth. It didn't say just of England, right? And who's the most senior public servant? The monarch, the Queen, right? See, not many people look at her like that. But that's all she is. Through her private secretary, Lieutenant Sir Robin Janvrin, in 2001. So if the Magna Carta was not valid, right, if it didn't have any power, so all these people who say 1297 is it, right, why did they respond to it if it had no authority whatsoever? See, that's the question you need to ask yourself. So there's a really important thing to for people to really turn their attention to. You would never reply to something if it had no validity. You just wouldn't. They just dismiss it. They go, why would I care? Carry on with your tall stories. Britain's history has apparently been turbulent and has sustained many tyrannical invasions, infiltrations, crimes, and occupations from the Roman Babylonian empires, the Germanic, Scotty, the Viking, Norse Normans. Oh, sorry, that was just Germanic and Scotty separate, sorry. Viking, Norse Normans, bankers, devious and foolish traitors, secretive, elitist, Sabbatean and religion orders, and imperialistic maritime corporations. So I'm guessing most people will be able to recognize that statement there. British and English common law, is made up of the most important, this is really critical, right? It's made up of the most important universal natural law principles. That's really critical to understand. The 1297 doesn't have that. Only the 1215 does. This is why I'm making a point of this, guys. Universal natural law are principles of the highest wisdom and come direct from the source of all natural divine creation. So I'm going to read that again, guys, because this is really, really critical. Universal natural law are principles of the highest wisdom and come direct from the source of all natural divine creation. They do not come through an institution, a pope, a banker, a monarch, a judiciary, a government, a secret society, a religion, or a think tank or a corporation. Now the 1297 does. So you need to choose which one you believe is going to be closer in alignment with you as a living being who is sentient and has capacity for self-governance. The one that's written by, a fiction, or the one that's interpreted by us, we the people, and understood how it's going to be a protective cover from government. Because that's all the Constitution is. It just puts constraints on those that we give our authority to make decisions on our behalf, because we don't want them making decisions that are going to breach our core fundamental rights. We don't want that. So we need to make sure there's a contract in place about the consequences to them if they were to ever do it. That's the purpose of a constitution. It's got nothing to do with granting you your rights, because you are born free. You're never going to put something in there what you can and can't do. The people would never do that. So if you read a document that's got something in there about your rights and what you can and can't do, it's not one written by the people. That's why I really wanted to read this. So we're going to go on. So where am I up to? I'm up to the principles are also part of our inherent common. Yep, so I'm up to that. These principles are also part of our inherent common sense wisdom. So they're all just things we innately know. No one needs to educate us on. The Great Constitutional Security and Restoration Clause, what we now recognize as Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta, is also a very important natural law principle and unalienable right. So that's really critical, guys. I'm really hoping you guys get that, right? That this is all just around natural law principles, the things we can't change, right, that are existing in nature. We have something that is connected to that. And anything that's not is nothing to do with your freedom, nothing. So this is about a set of conditions that must be in place so your freedom can be preserved. That's all the Constitution is meant to be, to make sure that there's no chance that your natural born rights can be impinged upon, ever. We all have the absolute God-given right to defend ourselves and our communities from tyranny and criminality. So if you are believing the 1297 is how you can do that, well, your evidence is the way we're living today. If this was in play, if we actually accepted the 1215, we'd have an entirely different scenario. You wouldn't even recognize life the way you do now. It wouldn't be possible, because we would be in charge of government. We would have the mechanisms in place. The government could never cross that line. And if they ever dared try, they'd be in front of us like a flash and off they go. See you later. Because that's the contract you go into when you go into that space where you're in service of the people. If you breach those limits, you're done. It's that simple. It's not up for negotiation. It's just not. Because sovereignty is the most precious thing that we have, and we would never, ever mess with it. And so that's what a constitution is there for, not to outline what you can and can't do. And the 1297 and everything that stemmed from that, that's all about what you can and can't do. So, if you really want to be a good slave and a good prisoner, then use the 1297, because your evidence is here right now today, because that's what's sitting in Canberra, guys. So I just wanted to see if there was anything else in here. Yep, there's two more. I think I want to read two more paragraphs. We're not going to sit around like lab rats for imposed medication to be administered to help satisfy the agenda of Big Pharma, crazy eugenicists Bill Gates and the Rockefeller Foundation, the UN, the WHO, and the World Economic Forum. We're also not going to sit around for other dubious smart technologies to be tested out on us by big telecom tech. So I'm just going to read one more. Since the lawful invocation of Clause 61 of Magna Carta in 2001, because the monarch has continued to break the constitutional coronation oath and has thereby allowed tyranny, danger, and harm to be inflicted on her subjects by allowing the constitutional law, does that say the constitutional law? Yep, sovereignty, defense, and peace of the realm to slip, and she has failed to reach a satisfactory lawful remedy, the powers of the head of state, including the oaths of allegiance to the monarch, So this is, we're going to lead into, hopefully next week, into explaining the oath that you take. But this is just a little bit of a teaser as to why you would take it. Have now lawfully moved over to the Constitutional Barons Committee, because that's the way it was set up, that if the monarch fails to do their job, they are no longer in charge, and it's up to the barons, the people who are actually the people's representatives, that actually put the whole document together and reinforced our common law traditions. That's all they did, and they just got the monarch to seal it. So then every other monarch is bound to it, and every other government that comes from the monarch is bound to it. So now we are to move over to them, and all that can prove that they stand under and promote Article 61 of Magna Carta. So that's what your oath is. Your oath is the proof that you are standing under that, your own protection. The rules, the traditions, and the customs that our ancestors agreed to live under are the same requirements we have today. They're no different. So anyone says it's a relic, it's got nothing to do with your freedoms. Well, freedom is the same no matter what era you're living in. It doesn't change. The conditions are always the same. And there's nothing else that I've heard of that requires us to uphold no loss, no harm, keep the peace, and commit no fraud. That's enshrined. I haven't seen anything else. That's all it is. We're only bound by that. If that's all we're bound by, we're free. So we're only bound by the collective conscience of the community we live under if we breach one of those or any of those tenets. Government has no other right to impose anything else on us that we don't agree that we want to live under. And that's what the 1215 does. It just enforces that the only power they have is to enforce that which we agree, and that is no loss, no harm, keep the peace, and commit no fraud. That's it. They have no other power over us. That's the only thing that we've allowed them to do. And so when you take the oath, you are just reinforcing your intention to reestablish that which was stolen from us. And that doesn't exist in the 1297 version. There's no such thing, or any other version of that's been created. So that's why I just wanted to go into that with some detail. I'm hoping that's clear, guys. I hope that's helped with your understanding. So we can move on, if you like, Carl, with the next slides that are in the list.
I'll get back to the slides, and that one will be the next one, I think.
When you're ready, my friend, feel free to read them all.
What can government do? Statute can and does give expression to common law, but that common law cannot be disregarded by Parliament, nor can it be repealed. It can only be extended, improved. Parliament is made by the law, therefore not above it.
So what that's saying is that, so let's say in 1215 they didn't have cars, for example, that didn't exist. And so, they couldn't have known every single thing that was going to come in the future. So they couldn't write in how we were going to conduct ourselves because they didn't know what technologies were going to exist, right? So the whole point is... And
this is a common argument from people who refute 1215, saying, it was written in the feudal times. I don't know what the difference is between 1215 and 1297 with regards to being any more relevant time date-wise. And that's where people get it all confused.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Absolutely. So those arguments, they're not even thinking about clearly when they're saying them. It's more just repeating verbatim what they've heard and accepted without really challenging it and questioning it. So what I wanted to explain is how a constitution works, that the 1215 is just what government's allowed to do. But because they don't know what's coming in the future, their role is to enhance our experience, right? Because their job is to be an administrative body to, administer a system of equity. Well, if new technologies come in, we've got to administer that in an equitable way. So then they would create legislation, the set of rules by which that could be done equitably, because the people can't foresee that, what's coming down the pike. So their job is to adjust and adapt to the times. And then they create legislation for that. So then that's where they would have created the Roads and Traffic Act, right? Now, if there was any sort of issue where that act that they created was a source of pain or suffering or loss or harm to any individual man or woman, well, then that would be scrutinized in the trial by jury. But if it turns out that it doesn't, and it's actually enhanced and they got it right, well, then we pass it into law by never, ever challenging it in any kind of way. So the monarch would grant it assent, and then we test it out. And if it turns out that it's all going fine, you know what I mean, and no one's like suffering a loss because of the way that they've written the acts, the legislation, then we just pass it as law because there's been no challenge. No one's been harmed. That's how it works. And so in there, they actually passed, you know, Parliament through times because Rome kept interfering. They passed certain acts that became part of the Constitution because it enhanced the people's protection against Rome. And so no one refuted it. It was actually to enhance our protection. So now the Treason Act, right, for example, that's in effect. So that's what the government wrote for itself about if it ever committed treason, what agents and officers working as government are liable to suffer if they actually commit those acts. So all we're doing is we're making them accountable to their own agreement as to why they even have their jobs.
Yeah.
That's the true nature of a constitution. So that's what that says.
They're very
when you're ready, my
common
friend.
law. Common law is the will and custom of the people. Statute law is the will of Parliament. Parliament is made up by the law, therefore not above it.
Yeah, look, it's
so that's pretty easy to understand.
Yeah,
statutes are created by Parliament. Parliament is created, well, by the people.
Correct. And so they can't be above that which, they can't be above that which created them, you know. And so those people who believe that they can go back to the 1901 Commonwealth of Australia Constitution, they've got that now. That's what they've got now. So you can't go back to it. You're in the process of actually the evolution of the fact that, you know, your ancestors voted for something they didn't understand the consequences of. You know, and you're bound to it now. So you want to go back to that which is already in existence, because you'll be back here quicker than you can, you know, blink your eyes, because you don't have any power in there. If you actually read that constitution, there is no safety mechanism in it that if Parliament ever commits treason of what we the people are to do to restore our supremacy over it. It doesn't exist. And there's no trial by jury. So there's no mechanism by which they're accountable when they cross the line. If you can show me where that is, I'd love to see it. But until you can, you're just owning up to the fact that you're a good slave. This is the hard work, right? This is the looking into yourself, the respect, the deep inner reflection. What have you swallowed as a truth?
Yeah.
And where's your verifiable evidence? This is the work, you know. If you want to actually change something, you need to look inside first.
Absolutely. More on common law. No one, including members of the police and armed services, is above the law. We are all subject to the law first.
So if we were actually running from the correct constitution, the one that the people lived by, the police wouldn't be police, they'd be constables, right? We wouldn't have police, they'd all be constables. And they would be actually acting in our service. They wouldn't be just doing what they've done today, shooting at us, you know, breaking into people's houses, you know, acting on pieces of paper that someone says, some court says, you know, you've done this, now you need to come and, you know, get dragged before the court for, you know, enforcing people. They wouldn't be doing that because they'd understand that that is a breach of their oath. They've taken an oath to protect the people's sovereignty, that the people are above the rulership and control of anyone else.
That's not to say that the constable wouldn't turn up on the doorstep of a wrongdoer and take them off to answer for their wrongdoings.
Correct.
That's what trial by jury is all about.
Exactly.
Make that clear. We're not saying free for all.
Yes. This is about the line between acting out of conscience and following an order. The order following could never happen if there was an accountability structure, because it wouldn't attract those people who would be willing to follow orders into those positions. The accountability structure would make sure it would attract the genuine people who are actually willing to act in the service of the people, and they couldn't be compromised. That's what an accountability structure would do. And if you use the 1901, there is no accountability structure in there, none. And then you're just going to go back to who has the power to punish, and that's government. It needs to be us. And trial by jury is how we do it, because the constables are under our say-so, not under government. But you take the 1901, they're under government, just like the court is. The court is independent of government because it's our mechanism for how we keep government in check just as much as each other. So it has two functions.
Absolutely.
So this is some of the things that I wanted to put up so people can see, you know, if we start actually utilizing Article 61 and we can start red pilling the police, but it needs to happen in numbers. And so these are just some, you know, resources that are available if people are willing to start displaying them. But it takes a bit of courage, guys. So I just thought I'd just show people what options there are. This one's just Victoria Police, as you can see. But it could be easily made to any state police, you know, just swapping the badge over. Can you read that, Carl?
Yep.
Is it big enough for you to read?
Yeah, I can read that. Under Article 61, I am lawfully bound to disobey all acts, statutes, and legislative laws as of invocation of Security Clause 61 of Magna Carta 1215 on the 23rd of March 2001. All laws, acts, and statutes are no longer of legal force, and wherewith all parliamentary governance and agents of the Crown are to stand down and consider their oath. If you obstruct me or attempt to enforce defunct acts and statutes, or attempt to extort money from me with fines, taxes, or fees, please know you will be personally liable to loss of complete commercial assets and life in prison. I will pursue a claim of tort against you. I must be allowed to travel, assemble, and speak freely without hindrance.
Now, could you imagine if people at the rallies started having this on their hoodies, on their T-shirts? Could you imagine that in mass numbers? Like this is the kind of
I think we can arrange that.
This is the level of conceptualization I'm inviting everyone to start to move into, to actually visualize waves of people all with the same written on them.
Yes.
Like that's when we start to become, you know, a force that we cannot be fooled. We know who we are and we know who you are. This
Absolutely.
is getting into we're penetrating into their consciousness. It can't happen with one, but when there's thousands, that's when it starts to the straw on the camel's back. It just the sheer force of the weight of each straw will just collapse the criminals. You know, if we all need to be unified in our understanding.
Yeah, I agree.
So this is
awesome.
a signal. This is a signal that we're sending to them. Can you read that one, Carl?
Yes. Since the invocation of Article 61 in 2001, it is everyone's duty under the common laws of the people, Magna Carta 1215 Constitution, to defend the entire realm, and to do so by royal command. Only traitors and those who have no real idea of what is happening would not stand in defence of our sovereignty under Article 61. By ignorance, unawareness, or intent to destroy our system of fair and just law, each and every one of those people not standing under the Constitution in order to defend it is an enemy of this nation and the Commonwealth at this time. That is not my personal judgment. That is the judgment of the law of this land.
So we'll just pause
Article
it there.
61.
Carl, we'll just pause it there for a second. I really wanted to harp on that one for a moment. This is not an opinion. Right? This is what really needs to be understood. This is not an opinion. This is David Robinson's work, and he's not telling you his opinion. He's telling you something that's verifiable, the true intention behind why the 1215 was even put together was because if our sovereignty was ever usurped, it is up to us, we the people, to do our part and come together and unify. And Article 61 is the instruction manual by which it can happen. So if you think that's a relic to actually have an instruction manual by which can unify the people, like then I don't know how else I can explain this to you. If that's a relic to you, is that not what we're all seeking? Are we not all seeking to unify? Well, this is the way it's done because it's done for us. We just need to follow it. And if we don't pick up and follow it, then it's on us for why we didn't do it. We can't say that there isn't a mechanism there. It is. It's whether you're willing to accept it. That's the difference. And when acceptance happens, that's when everything shifts. Sorry, man. I just wanted to really get into that. That was a really critical one.
I understand. Article 61 of 1215 Magna Carta was designed to bring the people together in unity, so that we can all collectively be the threat of force that will be necessary to overthrow the present regime. There is strength in numbers, people. Tyranny has never been defeated without the threat of force in the past, and it never will. With the correct peaceful strategy, we will not be required to use force in a violent manner. All we need are people who are prepared to stand as one, mainly as silent witnesses, to be part of the force that is required to stop the destruction of our rights and freedoms and gain peace.
Yeah, so this is the actual true nature of us standing in our power through a peaceful means. Because if we revert into violence, then we've just invited more violence. And so, the 4 tenets of common law are keep the peace. That's one of them, right? So to remain peaceful. So this is the instruction manual of how we unite and remain peaceful and honorable. Like that's our divine nature, to be those things. Instead of, we all just pick up arms and whatever, we're just going to tear each other apart like that. But this is the way. That's why if you think that's a relic, like, show me a better way. We're just not doing it. That's all it's missing, is we're just not out there acting it. You can think it, know it, all that stuff. Sorry, Carl?
Show us what we're missing with 1297 and the 1901 Constitution. We're looking for somebody to try and show us how that can stand up against what we're saying here. I don't, this isn't a gotcha moment, but what we're trying to do is make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction with a mechanism that will work. And this, Magna Carta 1215, Article 61, will work. It's entirely designed to do. An instruction manual that unites the people, distresses the usurped crown, and restores the rule of law so justice can be done. First step, take the oath. Second step, collect the evidence. Step 3, seize back our public buildings. That's an important step. Step 4, police fulfill oaths. They arrest the criminals. Step 5, common law private prosecutions via juries of the people to begin. And that's where the people get justice.
So I haven't heard anyone in any of the freedom rallies ever mention anything like this. And I'm asking myself, why not? Because who would reject something that's so simple and peaceful? Like, why would you reject that? See, the thing is that the police are only going to change when we come together and we demand the change, but we demand it from a position of knowledge of the actual law, which they don't have. And they won't start listening until enough of us come together and are repeating the same singular message. Only then will they start listening, especially if it's coming from their family members.
Yeah.
This is why this is critical. And it won't happen until people all start, everyone does their bit. You think you don't matter? Try it out first. Let's see what happens. If you start saying, well, what can I do by myself? You've already lost. You know what I mean? This is about really stepping into your courage, guys, and knowing from your heart who you are and what are the requirements to get where you want to be. Is it about attacking the castle all different ways, or is it to unify? That's the question. And do you want to unify violently or peacefully? And which mechanism is available if you want to unify peacefully? I don't know of any other one other than this. I've seen a lot of unification through violence, but I haven't seen a mechanism that unifies people through peace, where they don't need to go to protests, they don't write my will letters, they don't need to do, petitions, all those versions of begging. We are telling them, right? So when we, step 2, collect the evidence, we are sending them evidence of their crimes. They need to now rebut it. And if they can't, that's them admitting that they are committing crimes. And remember what we said about the Constitution? It's a one-sided contract of the consequences to them when they commit crimes. So that's the proof. That's the evidence. It's all there in front of you if you want to go read it and find it. And that doesn't exist in all the other versions of it, right? There's only one that the people put together through the barons. And it's there waiting for us to pick it up and use it.
It's another brilliant, brilliant lesson in Magna Carta 1215. If that hasn't made a few people's heads spin tonight, I'd be quite surprised, especially those who do follow us and have followed Rod Cullerton, amongst others, with the 1297 constitutional argument. I think that tonight's episode's probably given people a lot to think about. You might want to go and rewatch it. I know I do. My head's still spinning from a couple of the revelations that came out in there. So I'm really looking forward to next week, where we're going to step into the oaths.
Yeah, so we're just going to add a little bit more about how we can red pill the police, because they're the glue that's holding this whole thing together, right? They're the critical piece. So we're going to do a little bit more about that, and then we're going to start getting into the specifics of the oath, about what it is and what its power is and how we use it, and then possibly, if we get time, to start looking at some of the notices. So yeah, we can sort of happily leave it there. If there's any questions that you've seen that anyone has asked in the chat, I can't really see any questions that have been asked.
No. Everybody seems to be having a bit of a chat themselves tonight. I haven't seen too much here by way of questioning. So if you've got any questions, folks, punch them up in there now, or forever hold your peace for tonight. Just while we're waiting for anybody to put a question up, just a reminder that tomorrow night the show is live in front of a real audience. Or at least we hope that they'll be real. We're going to be on the Gold Coast tomorrow night at the Croatian Club in Carrara. We'll do our Ricardo Bosi Tuesday night Nothing But the Truth interview, and there'll be a few other interesting things happening there. Steve has organised the evening down there at the Croatian Club, and I'm looking forward to bringing the show there tomorrow night. It's going to be a bit of fun. Have a crowd audience for the first time, or a live audience for the first time. And you'll get to ask your questions. If you want to come along, tickets are $5 online. Tickets are available from Sticky Ticks. Just look for Voice of Freedom. I think you can search under that. And if you don't manage to find the tickets at Sticky Ticks, turn up at the door. $10 at the door. We're only covering costs, folks, nothing else. What happened to the chat last week with Patriot 101? Brett, my connection has been hammered now for a week and a bit, and in fact so badly that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I had practically no connection whatsoever. Could barely hold a phone call, let alone anything else. So that's been the problem all along with that. And in fact, Wednesday night probably started there. The Ricardo Bosi interview Tuesday night was hammered pretty hard last week, and to be honest, it's not even recovered since then. Hopefully, we will have those connection issues fixed. I have spent a portion of the weekend and 5 hours today dealing with Telstra, and they tell me that I will have a new piece of equipment turning up here tomorrow or Wednesday. Better not be here tomorrow because I won't be able to use it. So Wednesday will be fine, and hopefully Wednesday night we'll be rocking again on all cylinders. Just having a look at a question here from John. Love the sessions. I've watched other M15 stuff. Great. But how do we get rid of this system other than Bosi's approach? The only way to get rid of the system that we currently have is to band together, just like Fitz was just saying. The more of us that stand, the better, the easier, the faster this will happen. That is the key. Learn your truth, learn the truth, learn how to protect yourself with this truth, and stand. That's what's gonna make
it. Now remember, guys, the term law is routed in anything that's permanent, not temporary. So we are using the law, that which we agree to live under, which is permanent. I'm hoping that's making sense. So that cannot be challenged, because that's the rules we agreed to live under, and they are permanent. They're not just something we wanted to have for a little bit of time and then later we decided we didn't want it. No, they are permanent because they protect our innate capacity to live freely. That's why they're permanent, because we all have that to live freely. And there's only one place that's ever been enshrined. And if you're not going to pick it up, you can't unite. What unites us all, our desire to live freely. Well, there's a mechanism by which that is possible. It's how long it takes for people to come together and use it. That's all that's missing, is that real realization, that deep understanding, that this is where we are all united. There's no division here. It doesn't matter about your opinion. That's irrelevant. You either wish to act in the service of freedom or you don't. and there is a mechanism waiting for you to pick it up and use it. It's really that simple. So, everything else is just a distraction, or it's a preoccupation to make sure that you don't unite. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And if anyone would like to challenge that, please come with evidence. I would love to see it. I have no problem in anyone challenging anything I've said at all. I welcome it.
So there are so many common law groups.
So I was just going to say, what I'm speaking about can be verified. That's it. It's all verifiable. But anyway, go ahead, Carl. Sorry.
There are so many common law groups. Megs wants to know, why don't they unite? There's a variety of reasons for that, I think, Megs. There are groups like ours that are Magna Carta 1215 based. There are groups that are 1297 based. There are purely constitutional common law groups. I think it would be safe to say, Fitz, we don't believe that any of the other two groups actually have the skills or the law to fix this problem. This has to be fixed using 1215 and Article 61.
Yeah, like it's really straightforward. If you in your divine nature know that you're born free, what is the mechanism that can actually manifest that? It's just that simple. Is it something that was written by a parliament? Will that manifest? Will those mechanisms appear in there? Where are they? You just need to look into that. And unfortunately, there's far too many common law groups that are using the 1901 Commonwealth of Australia as their actual go-to resource to where their freedom lies. And they don't understand that anything that Parliament writes, it's never going to write into your freedom, ever. You can't write freedom into a document. It just exists. This is the mind trick. When they say it guarantees your freedom, a piece of paper cannot guarantee your freedom. It's just inherent. What we need to guarantee is the loss of our freedom. That's what we need to guarantee. So you need to understand how things are worded.
The courts are separate to the Department of Justice, Attorney General and governments. Well, you might think they are, but they're not. They're all working for the same corporation. They just happen to do so out of different buildings. That's the only difference there.
So
as I can tell anyway.
Yeah, well, I was going to say AAPI, I really recommend you go back into the previous lessons, because that's all it's already been explained, how that the courts are owned by the government. The Parliament created the courts. It's actually written in, I think it's number 71, the Act of Judicature. It's actually written in there. It states it in the Commonwealth Constitution of Australia. It says it. So they created the supreme eminence for themselves. So the fiction which we created, they created the courts. So it's not separate. It's created the illusion to believe it's separate, but it isn't. And if you don't look outside and see what life's like, and who's been pushing this, and all the challenges that have happened in the courts, and what's happened because of it, if you can't actually see that and you still think they're separate, I don't know what else I can show you. I really don't.
Yeah. Daryl, 1297 wasn't thrown in to confuse us. It was thrown in to subvert us. 1297 had 4 articles, original articles out of 1215 removed. Not the most important, I guess it is the most important, is Article 61, and the one that we are focused on. But the other 3 also support Article 61. They had to remove this. The church had to remove this if this great deception was going to be allowed to get past the people. Because if the people had have known and seen what they were doing, they would have dragged this Pope naked before them in the court before deciding that it was treason and hung him. And that they would have taken every clergyman, they would have taken anybody associated with it, and hung a lot of them, because that is what the law calls for. So the church couldn't allow that to happen. The church state couldn't allow that to happen. And so they subverted it with 1297. Now, you have to remember that in 1215, not many people could read. The people who could read, and particularly write, and in Latin, were the priests. So they were the educated ones, not the people. Even the king, when he signed his document and had it nailed up on the local inn wall, or nailed up to the tree at the local crossroads, you had to rely on the person walking past to be able to read it before they would be able to understand it. And of course, that wasn't the case back then. Nor was it the case in 1297, may I add. However, the church pressed the 1297 Magna Carta forward, and from there, and just prior to there, the Bill of Rights and a few other bits and pieces that came after have reinforced it, and slowly but surely, bit by bit, they have stripped all our freedoms from us and set us up as slaves. It's if it wasn't so horrifying, it would be beautiful in the way they've done it. As awful as that sounds. So yeah, not thrown in to confuse us, mate. Definitely thrown in to subvert humanity, and they don't really care what they did there. The other three articles off the top of my head fits. Oh God, 39, I think, was removed. 40, I want to say 41 and 49 and 61, but I could be wrong there.
Yeah, I haven't actually investigated the 1297 because I wasn't really interested in reading the fake one. So I was like, why would I? It's a fake. So yeah, so I can't actually speak from a position of authority on that one. Maybe we could ask Wayne Glue and get him to tell us.
Yeah, Wayne or Rod. I've invited Rod on the show. I don't get any emails back. I don't get any emails at all. A lot of people have suggested Wayne Glue to me in the emails. If you can get a hold of Wayne Glue and ask him if he'd like to come on and have a chat with us, we'd love that. Very good. All right, Fitz, another great lesson. Looking forward to number 9 next week. We're going to get into the really cool stuff, the oaths. And while people who have been running around touting 1297 have been spouting oaths now for some time, where our oaths are a little bit different, sort of.
Yeah, no, they're actually to do with the treason that's been committed by Parliament Commonwealth-wide, not just to one place, because the head of state is of the whole Commonwealth. So every government that exists in the Commonwealth, right, when they act against the people, that reflects against the monarch. So the treason's been committed across the entire Commonwealth. So this is not specific to a country, it's across the Commonwealth. So the crimes are committed everywhere. So we've got to start thinking outside the box, guys, outside our immediate bubble. We need to really understand the full gravity of what's here. Right? This isn't just about Australia. This is about the entire globe, guys. And this is the way it comes down. So everyone who's fixated on the 1901, right, you're missing the point here. There's a really big picture at play. You can't just have one country surviving, using something and everyone else just keeps doing that. No, we're going to be affected by that. You think we're just going to get out of it by ourselves? No, this is Commonwealth-wide. That's over 70 countries. That's where the impact is, guys. This is what you guys are missing. You're not seeing the big picture here.
Well, we've got one last little thing here. Dirge Media has a problem with the 9/11 reduction. I don't care what sort of a mathematician you are, Dirge Media. You don't understand gematria. If you understood gematria, you might have a bit of an idea of what the fuck we were talking about. But go and look up gematria, and you can leave your maths lesson for another day. I think that's fair.
So I think what he's done, he's put 93 above 92, and he's divided 92 into 93. Where it wasn't written that way. Yeah. It was written 92 divided by 93. So that's what you missed, my friend. It's the way you've positioned the numbers. So that's all that's missing. So it's not about you being right. It's about understanding how the occult does what they do. You need to differentiate the two. This is not about your opinion. This is about understanding your masters and how they think. That's what this is about.
All right, well, let's leave it there. I can't see any more questions. I picked his back up because I saw he's ignoring my question. So if I've ignored anybody's question, it's because I haven't seen it. And I can't see any other. I'm looking for question marks. So if you're writing questions without question marks, you've got little hope of me finding them. And no, that's all I can see for the moment. So thank you, Fitz. Really looking forward to lesson number 9 next week. We'll get into the oaths. And of course, coming up in Bundaberg on the 12th of this month, so not tomorrow night, but next Tuesday, we're going to be doing the Bosie Show live there too. But Fitz is going to come in early on the Tuesday night, and we might do an hour or so of common law. I know there is a common law group in Bundaberg that's keen to be a part of it all. So I think I've hooked them up with Juanita, and we'll all be joining enjoy each other's company on the 12th. I'm looking forward to coming up to Bundy. It's been a few years since I've been up there. It's bloody great. Do I have beer? Paul, I hope you're asking me that. Funnily enough, I don't, but I might have a scotch in the fridge if I'm a lucky man. Fitz, I know you don't drink, so you can go and have a soda water.
Thank you. I do enjoy my soda, so I appreciate the offer.
Good on you, mate.
Thanks again, guys. Thanks for being with us. Like and subscribe, because Carl keeps forgetting to say that. So yeah, the more you guys like to subscribe, the more people that can get access to this, and that's what we need. We need to share, spread the word. So please share it with your friends, and let's see if we can get more people on board.
Thank you very much, folks. Look forward to seeing you again next Monday night for lesson number 9, Magna Carta Learning Centre. I can't wait for it. It's very, very cool indeed. Thanks, Fitz. Look forward to seeing you again next week.
Will do, my friend. So good night, everyone, and I hope to see you all next week.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's rock!